Love the scene immediately following this with the scarecrows like turning their heads and shooting her. Like it's scary. It's spooky.
I mean, does this count as another gadget? Voodoo head guns?
Voodoo guns? Yeah, I think so. We finally get to see Solitaire in her home furnishings, right?
So let me just say,
yeah.
Do you think this is where they got some ideas for Queen Amidala's headdresses?
I have that note. I said, cut to Solitaire dressed like Queen Amidala. She is in her dope feathered tarot room where she has a desk that clasps around her. The production design in this area is so cool.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. She's like, I'm just seeing her at this table with this exotic fucking headdress. Yeah. But when that table opens and she steps out of it, I was like, whoa!
So fucking cool, right? Oh, that's literally her thinking cap. Kananga reveals that Solitaire's mother also had the gift of future sight.
Right.
And he said, when she lost her power, I had no more use for her. Uh-huh. And he basically tells her, like, I will decide when you lose your power, which is a very scary bit of dialogue on a second watch.
Yeah.
Because as we learn, Solitaire's family has this power that is tied to virginity somehow. Like she like a loss of innocence means she loses the power of future sight. So Kananga basically saying, like, I get to decide when that happens to you is terrifying. Right. Yeah. And like really reveals how despicable this character is. And luckily that whole bit of tension is broken by one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen, which is Roger Moore smoking a cigar while parasailing at night.
That cigar is a foot long, dude. It is so big.
It's like that one guy in Batman 89 who does like the "you crazy."
Yeah. That I could, like, with him on that hang glider and that cigar sticking out, it was hilarious, dude.
Bonkers.
But my favorite thing about the hang glider scene is when he actually flies over into the island, and which is also really weird that they keep Solitaire on this island in this big palace.
Solitaire has her own palace. Like, they say it's her house.
Yeah.
They're like the Kananga's witch lady's house, I think is what they say.
But when he lands up there
and kicks that motherfucker off a cliff.
Well, he kicks that motherfucker off a cliff, but when he steps out from behind the wing and he takes off that thing in the suits underneath, that is the best shit I have ever seen. It's
so cool. He's got like a tactical cravat.
I was like, when he did that shit, I was like, look at this sexy motherfucker.
It's so rad, right? And then he's got that sick ass like tan suit underneath, and Solitaire walks in and he's looking through her cards, and he's bought enough decks that he's created a deck that's all lover cards.
Yeah, I was like, this dirty bastard with these tarot cards.
It's pretty fucked up. I mean, like he basically is just like, we're fated to be together. And I do love the George Martin goes for a horn heavy version of the theme here.
Yeah.
There's a couple of really great iterations of the theme. There's like a really cool like sexy slow jam version of it later on that's just sort of like like they sleep together, and she's scared like that she's lost her powers, and he promises he'll keep her safe, but if we die, we're gonna die together, because like I'm not leaving your side. It's a weird dynamic, right?
Right. And I will say also, this is where I realized that was Jane Seymour.
Really, this scene?
Yeah. Like I was wondering when I would see her, and it finally dawned on me. And that's when I texted you. I was like, I literally just realized that this is Jane Seymour.
That's so funny.
Well, I mean, she looks like she's 18, dude. Like she's really young.
She's like 22, 23 or something like that. Their relationship kind of begins based on, as he quite literally says, I stacked the deck against you. But she tells him like, no, I wanted to do that. That was just like an excuse, essentially. But from here, his whole thing seems to be like, okay, now that we've slept together, I will keep you safe as long as you give me information. Yeah. And it's a weird mercenary thing. And it feels genuine this is another thing when you're changing actors. I believe that Connery's Bond would do this because we've seen him do this with, Tatiana and these other characters. Roger Moore doesn't feel like, I don't know, there's something so sincere and sweet about his Bond a lot of the time that and his character is so silly and quip heavy that it doesn't sit right to me when he does these kind of mercenary things like this,
Right.
Absolutely. There's no sense in going off half-cocked.
I mean, this whole relationship with he and Solitaire in this movie, it's a weird relationship to have in this movie. We've got Bond, who we know is a very well-seasoned person in that regard.
Well, and also you've got Roger Moore, who at 45 years old is the oldest man to be in his first Bond film, right?
Right.
12 years older than Connery when Connery started.
It's a weird plot point, and it just makes the entire relationship between he and Solitaire in this just weird for me. Yeah.
Well, especially because after this, most of her lines are just reactionary.
Yeah.
We don't get a whole lot of her interior life unless the only time we really talk about what Solitaire wants for the rest of the film is when she's like, James, come to bed.
Yeah. We just need to be somewhere where there's a bed. Lesson number 3. She turns into a little bit of a sex fiend after she's getting some Bondy.
Yeah, it's a weird choice.
But there's also a really weird scene with her when they're leaving the island. And this is where we find the poppy plants. We figure out it's all about heroin.
I love this jungle set with the wildflowers all around, the poppies.
Yeah.
We get Baron Samedi playing a walkie-talkie flute.
They're heading for the hill.
That great shot of the Scarecrow's head turning all the way around to watch them pass by. And then, we get a classic helicopter strafing overhead Bond action sequence.
And I was a little confused by this because he's taking Solitaire with him. He's getting her out of the situation. Yeah. But then when they get to the airport, she reacts in a way. Yeah, she reacts in a way like, "Oh, I was never on your side."
I think she's one, trying to cover his escape, and two, save her own skin, because she knows if Kananga thinks for a second that she was betraying him, she's dead before she leaves that airport.
Right.
Dead or worse,
that makes sense.
Well, and we learned that that's how Kananga operates because in one of the coldest lines he has in this movie,
any cost, any Bond must die.
Yeah, I mean, he is in charge of this island. The island police chase Bond. He steals this old tour bus. Pretty great chase in this little double-decker bus.
Do you think this is where they got the idea for the bus in Harry Potter?
No, I think Harry Potter got the idea. I think J.K. Rowling ripped off Halloween Town, actually. But I do think that this is where they got the idea for the double-decker chase at the end of Spice World.
I have not seen that piece of film history.
Roger Moore is in it, so you should.
Okay.
That should be one of our one-off specials.
Is he actually James Bond in that movie? Could that be made a case for?
He plays the head of the record label who sits in a room stroking a white cat and delivering cryptic riddles.
Remember, the drummer who is without sticks has no backbeat.
I think we can find a way to tie this to Bond, Nathan.
That movie, I love. I haven't watched it in years, but it was a fave of mine as a kid. I feel like I'd still have a good time with Spice World now. So let's bookmark that one. Maybe we can get Jenny Lou on for that one.
We'll see. I'll ask.
But yeah, I love this chase. I love the top half of it ripping off under the bridge and the cop car getting stuck in it.
Very Terminator 2 moment.
Yes. And that's clearly actually Jane Seymour hanging out the window as it makes that fucking needlepoint turn. Yeah, he wants to head to New Orleans to investigate Hamilton's death. And when he gets there, he also insinuates that he's baiting them with Solitaire, right? He tells Quarrel, I have what they want. I have this precious cargo on board.
Right.
And we're reintroduced to the cab driver from Harlem.
No, they sure beat the hell out of Harlem, don't it?
Mr. Big wants to talk to you. And then, right in, we mentioned this earlier, right into another lengthy chase sequence at the airport. This shit, I think, is so funny, though.
I just rewatched Tenet for the second time.
Oh, and Nolan wants so badly to make a Bond movie.
Dude, like Tenet is basically his Bond movie, but when I saw this shit, I was like, because in Tenet, if you have not seen it, they have this whole heist that they're pulling off that requires crashing a plane into a bay. And I got so much of like Christopher Nolan was just taking shit from Live and Let Die here, crashing planes left and right.
Christopher Nolan borrows so much from Guy Hamilton Bond, especially. But yeah, I you're right. It is. I didn't even think about Tenet when I was watching this, but that's so accurate.
And it seems like the chases in this movie, Guy Hamilton was just like, listen, I need money to buy a lot of things that I can crash and blow up.
Oh my God. I mean, there's a great stunt with a car flipping into the wing of a plane.
Yeah.
Bond essentially kidnapping this old lady who's there for a flight lesson, which is really funny. Mrs. Bell.
The look that she gives him when he opens the door.
Good morning. You're
Mrs. Bell, you're not my instructor. Where's Mr. Bleeker?
Indisposed.
And then when I don't remember what happens, but there's a point where something happens and she goes, "Holy shit!"
It's when they're closing the doors and they get up close to it. Yeah. It's like that moment in Star Trek Generations when Data goes, "Oh shit." It makes me laugh every time. It's so fun. And he just pulls up outside where the head of the airport is, like on the phone. Smash cut to, again, Felix cleaning up after Bond's shit, talking to Mr. Bleeker on the phone.
How's Mrs. Bell?
Intensive care, but she'll pull through. Yes, sir. Oh, no, sir. No one's questioning your patriotism. I'm sure you're a veteran, sir.
There's not a lot of subtlety in this film. I don't think that's a controversial statement, but I love, we cut back to Strucker watching the Filet of Soul in New Orleans. When another jazz funeral starts, the same assassin walks up to him.
This, I will say, is a moment of genius in this movie.
Yeah.
Because,
there's no dialogue. He just kind of smiles, looks over at him.
That's what I love is like, they've already established what this shit is right here.
And they trust the audience to know. Yeah,
you're not going to see this guy again. I loved that about this.
It's so good. And it's something that you don't really get in even the newer Bond movies. Like there is a sequence, I know I'm jumping way ahead to No Time to Die. You've seen it at this point, but there's a sequence in No Time to Die when a character basically looks at the camera and goes, "The virus is working the way I programmed it to. It's killing all of these people and not this person." Like he literally says it for the audience. I'm like, I'm watching the movie.
Right. Right. No, I think we need more subtlety like that in things. Like
it's so good.
That's unfortunately, and we constantly talk about Nolan here and on the VHS Files, and it sounds like I'm always shitting on Christopher Nolan. I fucking love Christopher Nolan movies. His stuff tends to be complex, so therefore almost all of his dialogue is exposition.
Yeah.
Where sometimes I'm like, just and that's kind of why I love the end of Inception, because that's at least going, think what believe whatever you want at the end of this movie. He's not having to explain what happened to you. That's unfortunately the problems that I find with Nolan now, is how much he has to explain everything to you.
I was actually having this conversation recently, and I think a lot of that comes down to Jonathan Nolan, because I think sometimes he as a screenwriter mistakes complexity for quality. Like if there's enough layers to this, it means it's better.
Right.
Which is why Westworld goes so far off the rails.
That's exactly what I was about to say. That's probably why we're not going to get any more Westworld. Like it's just gotten to a point where it's like, okay, I don't understand what the fuck is happening.
Yeah. You can introduce Catwoman to me and I'll just believe she's a thief. You don't have to tell me that also there's a software that can delete someone's criminal record. Like we don't have to add 5 more subplots, and we run into that with these Bond movies sometimes, right?
Yeah,
like just wait until we get into the Timothy Dalton era where I'm like, I love this movie, but there's like 8 villains. I don't know what he wants. But yeah, this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because like you said, it's very subtle. We see the assassin approach him. We see them exchange a nice little look, and then we cut to the horn player and everyone celebrating. So we know a death has occurred.
Hell of a send off.
And then we're back in the club.
Soul.
But I mean, we get in there and we've got the reference to the joke, had a nasty turn in a booth. I love the whole thing.
That's a good joke.
He wants to sit by the stage, but little does he know there's also a trapdoor there waiting for him. That shit was hilarious. I laughed so hard.
And it's so weird that, like, the implication here is that even regular citizens are just in on what Kananga does.
Right.
Like, no one reacts to a man disappearing into the floor.
But I don't want to shy away from the performance of Live and Let Die here. I think this is a great little performance of this.
It's so good. It's on the soundtrack. Unfortunately, the soundtrack is not streaming on Spotify, but like it's worth a purchase. Like it's one of my favorite Bond soundtracks, like of all of them.
Right.
And this performance is a banger. And it leads into the reveal of Mr. Big ripping his makeup off in a pretty great moment, and his plan.
Sell heroin for money?
My apologies, I'm sure you simply give it away.
Excellent, Mr. Park.
And then once everyone is hooked and he's driven every other dealer out of business, he will be the only supplier.
Yeah. And
he'll have a monopoly over the drug trade in America, which is terrifying. Like, what an awful, horrifying plan.
Like I hinted at earlier, I mean, with this being from Guy Hamilton, Goldfinger, same sort of story. It was not until this whole plan was revealed that I was like, wow, okay. I thought it was just going to be about the heroin trade. No, it's going to be about something bigger than that. It's going to be, and I love the way Yaphet Kotto just sits there and he's just taking the makeup off as he's,
and he's smiling. He's so soft-spoken.
He never feels like he thinks that Bond has got one over on him.
No, because Bond will say something and he's like, "What? No."
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not trying to make a profit yet.
Right.
I'm giving it away for free.
I also wanted to take a moment here to talk about Teehee. We haven't really talked about him much.
Right. Yes.
Teehee is a scary motherfucker, man.
He sure fucking is.
And
yes.
Oh my God, that smile that he has throughout every scene of this movie.
Yeah.
And just, you add the hook for a hand, that's one thing, but
yeah.
The fact that every time we cut to him, he's got that grin on his face.
Smile. Yeah.
And like there was a moment there, and I think it's in this scene where he's just standing there smiling, and I was like, "This is the scariest fucking dude I've seen in a Bond movie in a while."
He's so good, even in the shots where you can tell that he's just holding a hook, like Captain Hook style, like inside his shirt. Teehee, played by Julius Harris, from movies like Superfly, Black Caesar, Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I mean, this guy, he's awesome. Like anytime he shows up, he fucking means business. And Teehee is, he's physically imposing, but you're right. It's how happy he is about what he's doing.
Yeah.
That like truly makes him scary. And he's this is the whole scene. Like Kananga tells Bond, if Solitaire can't use her powers, if you have taken her powers away, he's going to take a finger, then he's going to take something much more precious.
The way he plays it, where it's like, okay, I know she just lied to me. I'm going to let this slide. But
he does. Yes, that's interesting, right?
It's really cold, and he tells Solitaire, he's like, I know you lied to me.
Yeah.
So you're useless to me now.
Yeah.
And this dude's pretty fucking cold.
Yeah, I mean it's a scary scene, and it ends with him telling Teehee and Whisper to take Bond to the farm. So we get this shot of a sign that says trespassers will be eaten, and we are introduced to the alligator farm owned by Ross Kananga, who the villain was named after, and who does some truly insane stunts in this sequence.
Yes,
because that is Kananga running over the alligators.
And I want to say we've gone to so many locations in this movie. This movie has gone from New York to New Orleans to the Caribbean to
back to the bayou,
like all over the place. Now we're at a fucking alligator farm.
Yeah,
and We're not even done with the movie yet, folks.
We've still got like 45 minutes left of the movie. But I love this whole sequence. Teehee just giving him like a lesson on alligators and the difference between alligators and crocs. The shot of that bridge pulling back while Teehee just kind of smiles is so good. But yeah, Ross Kananga, / James Bond runs over a pack of alligators to get to this to get to the other side. And there is footage out there of Kananga falling. Like it took like 9 takes. A couple of times he fell into the water and got nipped at. He had to have like over 100 stitches because he got like his leg like torn up.
Oh man,
it's insane. But
and and even though I haven't seen this movie, you've heard about this stunt in this movie through watching videos on the internet.
So famous,
And it didn't dawn on me that this scene was coming until they said, "Let's go to the farm." Like it didn't even dawn on me that that's what was going to happen in this movie. But I will say, for me, expecting it to be really super cheesy, I think the scene plays very suspenseful.
It's good.
And I actually really kind of like it when he runs over the alligators.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, no, it's 100% what Adam West's Batman would have done.
Right.
But it is up to and including throwing chicken into a meth lab or into a heroin lab so that he can blow it up with all the crocs inside. It's a really inventive sequence, and I love all the shots of them, making their way up onto the sandbar and him sort of on his back heels, not really sure where to go. He tries to use his magnet to bring that boat over, but it's tied to the post. It's all good stuff, and it leads into the quarter of the movie that is Smokey and the Bandit / Cannonball Run.
So I will say right here, after all of this, all the stuff with the alligators goes down at the farm, and we start our Smokey and the Bandit sequence here.
Yeah.
Jenny she looks over at me and she goes, "This is a weird fucking movie."
Yeah. Yes.
And so I was like, it made me laugh really hard, but I was like, okay, well, because I had already watched it once, and this was my second viewing with her. So I was like, okay, well, we're about to start this sequence here with the boat chase. I said, there's gonna be a moment where you're gonna look at me and go, "Is this really still happening?" Because this fucking boat chase goes on forever.
It's really long.
It's so long, dude.
It's so long. It's really impressive. They won a Guinness World Record for the jump across the bayou, like accidentally.
We did hold the world record for boat jumps, and I think that particular day Jerry jumped 115 feet.
This is like another genre we're introducing here. It's a truly bizarre turn of events, especially if you're not expecting it, and most particularly because it introduces J.W. fucking Pepper.
By the powers invested in me by this parish, I hereby do commandeer this vehicle and all those persons within.
Who is our Jackie Gleason of this movie?
Boy, howdy, he wishes.
That's a big 10-4. This is Sheriff Buford P. Justice of Texas.
So it starts off with a cold as hell line because the guy on the dispatch, the henchman, yells, "The agent escaped. The man who gets him stays alive," which is cold as hell.
Right.
But like, then we cut to this motherfucker going, "Toby, I got me a regular Ben-Hur down here doing 95 minimum." Like he sounds like that, like the hound dog from fucking the Aristocat.
And the fact that he's got this honking thing, a dip in his lip the entire time, and it never falls out. It's always there.
And it takes him 45 minutes to say any line of dialogue.
Now you listen to me, trooper boy. We got a swamp full of black Russians driving boats to beat the dam down here.
I'm gonna commandeer this here vehicle from you. Like,
that means you, jackass.
Yeah, smart ass.
Well, I will say Smokey and the Bandit was a movie that was on quite a lot in my house when I was a youngster.
Sure.
And that was the first thing that came to mind. I just started thinking of Sheriff Buford T. Justice, you sumbitch.
I thought J.W. Pepper was so fucking funny when I was a kid.
What did you get that chicken coop off the road?
Now I'm just like, what? What was I thinking? What's even funnier is, so this actor, Clifton James, he's also in Superman 2. He's the sheriff when Zod and the other Kryptonians land in that little town. He's essentially playing J.W. Pepper again.
Hey, hippies! Get your butts off the road!
Not only is he like, is this an annoying character, but I really don't love him constantly calling people boy.
You got a set of wheels, you just won't quit, boy.
It's real uncomfortable.
Right.
It's cut slightly by the fact that he then later calls that chicken coop driver the same thing, but it's just, we're in the South.
Yeah.
And you're saying, like, in the 70s, like, it's just, come on, man. And maybe that's the intention. Maybe we're meant to be like, oh, fuck this guy in particular. But it is so strange that, like, not only do we get this chase between Bond and these henchmen, but we introduce a whole town of characters who are J.W. Pepper comes out of the gate fully formed. Like, it's almost like this movie pretends that we're crossing over with another movie about J.W. Pepper. Like, oh yeah, everybody knows J.W. and everybody knows his cousin Billy Bob.
You call my brother-in-law Billy Bob, he got the fastest boat in the whole damn river. Billy Bob sure enough fix their ass. Yeah, call Billy Bob.
Like, it's so bizarre that, like, and he's given so much real estate in this movie. It's wild.
This is another thing that I kind of harken back to what I remember about A View to a Kill. There's a particular chase in A View to a Kill where there's a fire truck that's gone through New York or some shit.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, they're like, we're going to get you, you son of a bitch. And they're going to be like, oh no, this is James Bond. You're not going to be doing anything to him. Like,
yeah.
Again, like, I feel like I'm going to be seeing this happen a few more times.
Well, we get so much stuff here. Like, there's a guy on the radio asking if JW can come over and shoot Mrs. Pearson's dog, like, who has rabies. There's a whole sequence where the boat shoots across the yard and into a pool. I love the shot of the two henchmen trying to paddle their way through the pool in the boat.
That reminded me of the scene where the car crashes into the pool in Last Boy Scout. Remember that one?
Sure. Yeah.
That reminded me of that.
Yeah, and like, Bond steals another boat, goes through a barricade, smashes through a wedding. There's some extras in there that aren't sure what they're supposed to be feeling at the time. The cops get held up by a chicken coop. The boats cross the highway and go into the water on the other side.
Yeah, like, there are more boats on land in this chase. Almost like, it's 50-50 land, 50-50 water. Yes. It is fucking crazy. But there was, and I will say, there was a moment where Jenny looked at me and goes, is this really still happening?
Yeah.
Like, it goes on forever, dude. It's crazy.
And dude, I'm telling you, I mean, it's been a minute since I've watched it, but, like, there is a later movie where I think there might be a longer boat chase. I'm not sure, but it is truly inexplicable. But I mean, Bond eventually gets the best of this henchman. He blinds him, knocks his boat into this trawler that explodes in a pretty great stunt. And in one of my favorite shots in the movie, Bond just slowly pulls up to the dock, kind of waving at Felix, and Felix is so fucking mad.
He's like, I have so much shit to clean up now. Like, he's becoming the M. Like, Felix is just basically the M in America. Like, he's got M in Britain and then M in America. That's Felix.
Absolutely. And JW's best moment, actually, is when he gets out of his fucked up cruiser and he goes, what are you, some kind of doomsday machine? And he's told that, no, actually, this fellow's an Englishman. He's coming over to help us. He's a secret agent. On whose side? It's so dumb, but man, it does get us a couple of good moments.
I mean, it goes on for so long, dude, and then it ends. And I swear, dude, it's like this whole chase seems like it should have been in a different movie.
Well, it was intended for Diamonds Are Forever, and then we got the buggy, the dune buggy chase instead.
Wow. We have Guy Hamilton to thank. He's like, I want to spend a little more time in New Orleans, drinking and listening to jazz. Let's make the boat race a little bit longer. Let's make the boat chase a little bit longer.
Guy Hamilton loves a chase. He loves a chase. Now we're like, okay, now that that's over, let's get back to the plot of the movie. Felix is like, yeah, we've already set bombs in the poppy fields. Don't worry, you don't have to see that. We had to have a chase sequence for 18 minutes.
Right.
He sends Quarrel and Bond into the island. Quarrel gives Bond special rounds for his shark gun in case sharks come back.
Comes out of nowhere,
yeah.
Like, this is normally where I want my cue.
You're going to need these and the shotgun on the way back.
Giving me the shark gun.
We do get a great line from Quarrel, though.
Seems like the party started. My regards to Baron Samedi, man. Right between the eyes.
This Roger Moore looks so fucking good in this last scene.
But my note is like Bond comes out all Dirty Harry. He's got that Smith & Wesson, dude.
He does, but he's also got the tactile neck. This is where Archer got it from, is specifically this outfit.
I mean, I didn't invent the turtleneck, Lana, but I was the first to recognize its potential as a tactical garment. The tactical turtleneck, Lana.
Archer.
The tactile neck.
Bond goes to rescue Solitaire from this voodoo ceremony, and in the craziest shot of the movie, Baron Samedi rises from the grave and Bond shoots his fucking head off. It's really good. It's a really good effect.
Yeah, it's like I was surprised when it happened.
His eyes roll around as like one part of him's gone, and then Bond shoots him again and he like shatters.
Yeah. And this is, again, another scene that had me going, Temple of Doom all the way, man.
Totally.
This is, all the makings of Temple of Doom are right here in this scene.
But also, like, are we to believe that this guy is really, like, the voodoo god? Like, is he a priest with magic powers?
That was a question I wanted to bring up. Because you've got Solitaire reading the tarot cards the entire movie. Like, Is this the Bond movie where they introduced like
supernatural
stuff?
It sure seems like it, right?
Right.
I don't know that the series really ever goes back to that, but this is the one that's just like, yeah, this shit's real. Because he explodes Baron Samedi, and then Baron Samedi rises again and starts cackling, even as the poppy fields are blowing up around them. It's a really good sequence. And I wish this sword fight went a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Cut some of the boat chase. He's so camp. Like he's so like just elevated. Everything he does is so theatrical. And I think this character's fascinating, even though I don't really understand what his deal is in the context of the movie.
Another character that doesn't really need to be here, but honestly,
the movie's better for him being there.
Yeah, if he wasn't in it, I would miss it. Like, it's crazy.
I wish. It almost, to me, I'm like, if this guy can't die, Kananga should be working for him. He seems like a much bigger deal to me.
Right. Like, that was kind of where I was thinking the plot would have gone, was Baron Samedi is
like pulling the strings.
Yeah, he's Mr. Big. Yeah. But no, they don't go that way with it.
No, instead he's slashed with this sword, falls into a coffin full of snakes, and stops moving. It's a pretty good.
Apparently the snakes were a real problem on set too.
Yes. Oh yeah, Jane Seymour almost got bit. Yep. A production assistant, like when an actor passed out when a snake got put in his face.
Yep.
I think the director of photography or somebody like refused to be on set when they were there.
Right.
It was tough.
It would have been a bad set for me to be on. I'll tell you that.
100%. Yeah. We come a long way from just putting a glass sheet on top of Sean Connery and letting a snake run around. Look, I mean, I'm a little surprised that we get another cave lair, right? Like the series of tunnels underneath the island. But Kananga is so chill.
Ah, Mr. Bond, there you are. And the Solitaire as well.
About this whole thing. He's like, I'm really not worried. I'm insured. Like, I'm gonna, my operation will survive this. he's like, tell me about this gun you got. It's so cool.
And dude, when he shoots the couch and sends Whisper on the backside of it,
so
that
funny.
shit is hilarious. Because obviously that's some foreshadowing they're giving you, but it did not hit me as to where that was going to end up.
How could it? How in the world could it, Josh? I mean,
ingenious.
We get another cold line from him. Drown, Mr. Bond. I doubt you'll get the chance to drown.
Oh yeah, I love when he cuts his arm and he's like,
perhaps we could try something in an even simpler vein.
On the contrary, Mr. Bond, I think you'll find those wounds quite fatal.
We've got more fucking sharks in a Bond movie.
More sharks are going to lower him into this shark tank, which sharks figured very heavily into the original novel. The original ending of the book was, this is one of the scenes I've read, like one of the few scenes I've read in a book that made me like my teeth like chatter while I was reading. Like it just, it's so uncomfortable. But the Kananga's plan to dispose of them, or Mr. Biggs rather, plan to dispose of them was he tied them to the back of a speedboat, and as he's driving along, his plan was to drag them over the coral reef, and it would shred them up. And then he'd take them out into the water where the sharks would feed on them.
Wow.
And it culminates in Bond, I think, blowing up the boat, if I recall correctly, and then he grabs Solitaire and tumbles across the reef and like gets like all torn up, but he's like, they're like rescued at the last second by Quarrel.
Wow.
But it's really like, it makes me cringe. It's so violent.
That's pretty crazy, man.
Just the thought of it is really, is it as crazy as say shoving a gas pellet into someone's mouth and turning them into
well before we get to that, I want to talk about when Bond does get loose. I mean, he gives Whisper a good kick across the room.
When Kananga comes at him with the knife, he has a weird little spin, he has a weird little feint, and then my favorite bit of this is when he comes up with the knife first in that wide shot, Bond is just kind of like he's like smiling. He's like, I don't give a shit.
What the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah. They both take a tumble into the water. Bond shoves one of those gas pellets in his mouth and roll the clip. I mean, like, how do I even explain this? Kananga turns into a balloon and pops.
This was very reminiscent of the guy who blows up in
Big Trouble in Little China.
For me.
I don't think he's gonna stop.
It's fucking crazy.
It's nuts, dude.
I can't decide if it almost ruins the movie or makes it better. We get a fully insane one-liner here of,
where's Kananga?
Well, he always did have an inflated opinion of himself.
Well, I'll say this: we're almost done with talking about the movie, but like this death, Kananga's death, is really kind of what cemented for me. Okay, like, I know what I'm gonna be getting out of these Roger Moore movies now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
And that's fine. That's kind of what I signed up for. Like, I'm ready. Like, with as weird as so like bizarre as this movie is, I don't hate it in the least. No. Like, it is a crazy ride, dude.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like, if for better or worse, this is emblematic of where the Moore movies go. They are silly, they're over the top, they're campy, and I fully understand when it doesn't work for people.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is based in nostalgia, but like, I am a sucker for Batman 66. I love Roger Moore's James Bond.
And I think as us being fans of those things, we can kind of watch this stuff with our tongue in our cheek. Like,
totally.
It's like, this is what you get from this era of movie making and storytelling. Like,
and I'll never say this is a movie as good as From Russia with Love or On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Right.
But it is one of my favorite Bond movies.
It is one of those that is so far an anomaly for me. Like, there's so much quote unquote wrong with it, but so much that I love that I'm willing to just kind of like
look past
it.
That's how I am too. Yeah, for sure. And it helps that we end it on a high note because, I mean, this is no Red Grant fight, but this tussle with Teehee in the train car is really good.
We get another train fight!
James Bond train fight!
No, I actually completely forgot about Teehee, and I was so happy when this scene happened.
Yeah, it's really good.
Another thing I think might end up being a trope as we move forward in these movies.
One last showdown.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
well, it's you got to kill what's Hans Gruber's main henchman.
Oh, Carl. Yeah,
Carl. It's the Carl effect.
Have the Carl.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do want to say though that Jane Seymour in this blue nightie.
It doesn't get any better than that.
No.
Look, without getting all male gazy, I fully agree with you.
Mm-hmm. That's all I'll say.
Gin.
I think maybe this is the scene you were referring to when you said there is a good fist fight scene with Roger Moore in this movie. This is a really good one.
They're like tearing through the walls. They're
yeah.
like, and it is like in this tiny little compartment.
Yeah.
Maybe even less room than Bond and Red Grant had. But it's a really good fight. I think Roger Moore's Bond works best when he is outsmarting his opponents or using things against them. Like, he can't beat Teehee in a fight, but he can sure flip that motherfucker out a window if he like severs, the controls on his hook, or the wires on his hook.
I'm hesitant to believe that there were windows this big on a train.
I don't know.
maybe not, but
it's smart. It's fun. Yeah. And we get a horror movie-esque like last little tag with Baron Samedi sitting on the front of the train.
I love that shot, man.
Like it's not over.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. I've never seen most of these other movies, but I don't think we ever see Baron Samedi again.
We don't. No,
so,
unfortunately.
That could have been something genius. They would, they were taking little things here and there in all the Daniel Craig movies and kind of paying homage to the older Bond stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, why wouldn't you bring like a character like Baron Samedi back in, like someone who's like left open ended like that?
They do in the GoldenEye video game. Like, you can fight against a bunch of older villains, and then at the end of that like mode, it's revealed that Baron Samedi is still alive. Like, wow. It's a fun little gag. Like, it's not canon or like it doesn't really have a story. Yeah, but it's a fun little bit for fans in the know.
I actually never played GoldenEye, the video game. So
yeah,
when we get to that era of Bond, I won't have that nostalgia to fall back on. So we'll do some live gameplay for that episode.
Dude, I'm down. I'm totally down. That's Live and Let Die. James Bond will return, and the man with the golden gun.
That is Live and Let Die.
Boy, howdy, is it ever.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, it is a fun ride. Like, there's plenty of stuff to not like in it, but, I had a great time.
Me too.
And if it wasn't for that second watch, I probably would have been a little more lukewarm on this one.
Sure. Yeah, because, the first one, you're just sort of, like, taking it all in. Like, this is so fucking different. This is something completely new, really.
I used to try and take notes on the first watch. And now I'm like, no, I know I'm going to watch this movie twice. Yeah. So the first watch, I'm just going to watch it and take it in. Then I'll do my notes the second
I like that. Yeah, that's how I did it this time, too. And I've watched this one more than any of the other Roger Moore flicks, and I still just found myself finding some new stuff this time because I'm really like analyzing it. And I will say, like, yeah, it's not a perfect movie. Obviously, there's things that have not aged well, as we've covered in other Bond movies, but there's also stuff that I like. I think the best of intentions still led to other problems in terms of stereotypes and weird handling of certain characters.
I'm sure this ain't exactly your debut with this sort of thing.
But I just, pound for pound, I think this is just a really fun caper, right? Like, if you want to see Bond interacting with some wacky villains and embroiled in a plot that's very different from anything he's done before or since, Live and Let Die is kind of a singular entry in the franchise.
It proves that no voodoo curse can stand up to James Bond's magic.
This is the one that has a reputation for being kind of goofy. So
keep the change.
Rightfully so.
Let's go ahead and talk about our favorite gal, gadget, and goon from Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
So this is a new segment we're going to start doing here on the Roger Moore episodes.
Yeah.
We kind of did a recap of our Connery stuff on the last episode. You can go back and check that episode out. But for this movie, all right, so we got our top gal.
I think it's pretty obvious. Reason for the season is Solitaire.
So, I mean, Solitaire, when she shows up, it's like you gravitate towards her the entire movie.
I mean, it helped. Yeah, Jane Seymour is just such a charismatic and fantastic actress, and like as many issues as I have with the character kind of becoming a pawn in the story in the second half of it, I think her performance is very interesting. I think there's just a glow about her that really draws you in. And she has some truly fantastic costuming in this movie.
Absolutely. And I was almost at the point where I was letting the relationship between Solitaire and Bond in this movie push her out of that spot for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I was going to go with Miss Caruso from the beginning.
Sure,
just because she was feisty and she wanted to go one more time with Bond, you know.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt Solitaire is the one in this one.
The wallpaper on my computer is Roger Moore and Jane Seymour and like a publicity still from this movie. Like I truly love them together, and I think that there's no other choice for me really.
All right, well, Gadget. There was a ton of them in this movie, man.
So many more than you think there are, right?
Yeah,
Because at face value, you're like, well, it's the watch, but then the watch does like 3 different things, and then everybody else has different things. What did you go with?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of options for me, and you know, even though I saw so many, and there's so many that do really cool things, the one that I was the most impressed with is the trapdoor coffin in the jazz funeral. Like, it's
really cool.
I just think that's awesome that they can take it and put it over the guy, pick him up, and take him away.
Yeah,
like I was just like that. You know, there was a couple of different ones that I was considering, but that was the one that I was like, nope, that's my one right
and it's done really well to the point where I can't tell if it's a cut.
Right.
Or if the stuntman is like holding onto like bars in there or something. Like I can't. It's really good.
Yeah. What about you?
Gotta go with that walkie-talkie flute. I mean, I forget about it every time I watch this movie, but when he's playing his little flute and he goes like, "They're on their way," it's so good.
He has such a smooth delivery of how he does it. It's so good.
Like he's working his fingers up the reeds, and then he suddenly it's such a smooth motion. It's so good. I love it.
All right, well, Goon. This one was a little tough for me.
It's tough, yeah.
I like Baron Samedi, although I don't think he has much to do in the movie.
But he's the flashiest one.
He's
like,
definitely.
Yeah,
definitely the one that's your eye is drawn to.
He's got great makeup, incredible costuming. He's got that fantastic
smile,
fake out
like
the cackle and the shot where he gets his head blown off. I think I love Baron Samedi, but he's not my top choice.
Yeah, mine either. I've got to go with Teehee, man.
Me too. Yeah,
I was gonna go with Whisper because I like the idea of just a quiet henchman that will.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the scene where he's coming in. He's like, "Do you want me to open your champagne?"
Yeah,
I love. He could have warned Kananga. When
Right.
Bond escapes from his bonds and he jumps down. He goes like, "Look out!" Like
right.
It's real good.
But I was gravitating towards the quiet guy as a good goon, but like
he's good.
That second watch, man, and Teehee, I was like, God, dude, like I'm not a fan of his name. I feel like they could have gave him a better character name. But
in the book, Teehee was like constantly like he had a henchman who was constantly giggling. So he was trying to get through what he was saying. Like it was almost like a tick or a compulsion.
Gotcha.
And then in this one, like he's just kind of like the jolly one.
Right. But it wasn't,
he loves his job so much.
But it was that scene when I noticed him, just that smile, that cold, like he looks so jolly when you look at him, but underneath that, like he's just cold, man. And
he's scary.
I think he's great. I think he's great.
Absolutely.
Also, one more new segment we're gonna do.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about this when we're gonna go, and the name of this segment is Liners. One-liners.
Names is for tombstones, baby.
We're going to talk about our favorite one-liners in the movie.
And, you texted me like an hour before we recorded, like, hey, do you want to try this out? And I was like, yeah, that's going to be easy because 90% of the dialogue in this movie is a quip.
Right.
So I think there's so many to choose from. I had to, and I don't know if this really counts as a one-liner so much as it's just Bond being sassy.
Right.
But when they get to the alligator farm and they look at the baby gators, Bond says,
I don't suppose those potential overnight bags are orphans.
Oh, no, we have some moms and dads as well.
to which he is like, no, you wait till you meet mom and pop or something like that.
No, Bond has some great ones.
So good.
This.
Yes.
But I'm going with one from Kananga.
On the contrary, Mr. Bond, I think you'll find those wounds quite fatal.
That shit sent chills down my spine.
I almost went with a Kananga line as well because I think names are for tombstones, baby, is such a good fucking line.
At that moment, you don't know it's Kananga in the movie,
right?
But I know where you were going with that.
It's very good.
I will say, like, before we started doing this podcast, I used to say, I'd seen the Daniel Craig movies and I was like, I don't think I need to go back and watch any of the old Bond movies.
Sure.
I'm fine with Craig being Bond in my life.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I'm having so much fun so far going back and watching these.
Yeah,
that I'm so glad I changed as a person and was like, no, I'm going to watch the Bond movies.
Yeah.
You get a lot of history too, man. Like you see people like Jane Seymour, where she started and where she's gone from there. And you see
how you can chart the evolution of filmmaking through these movies too, right?
I mean,
like
this one felt like a 70s crime caper. It felt very different from the 60s Bond movies.
If they didn't like we said at the top, like they don't really make a big deal out of the change in actor. So everything else around it has to be fresh and new and exciting and exotic and strange. And I think that they accomplished that for better or worse. But there's no other Bond movie quite like this one.
All right. Well, we're going to come back next month with The Man with the Golden Gun.
That's right.
I have no idea what this movie's about.
But if you had to guess, what would you say The Man with the Golden Gun might be about?
This is just a hint that I get from the title. There'll be a man with a gun made of gold that Bond will have to fight and stop from destroying the world.
We'll see how correct you are when we come back next time. And I just realized this movie came out the next year. So like Live and Let Die was a smash hit. They got started on it immediately.
So they fucking cut film on this one and went right into the next one, I guess.
And I'll tell you, you can look for it's Guy Hamilton's fourth and final James Bond film.
So we should see some good chase scenes in the next one, maybe, huh?
Maybe we will.
We'll see next month. Well, until next month, thank you so much for watching the videos. Yes. Everyone who's been watching, if anybody's watching for the first time, thank you so much for checking us out.
Totally.
Everybody's got to start somewhere. That was kind of the whole point of this podcast. So, like I said, you can go to a link in the description box below where you can get a playlist of the Connery movies. You can hear us talk about those. We'll be back next month to talk The Man with the Golden Gun with Roger Moore. Yeah. Until then, Nathan.
Stay shaken.
Never stood.